Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have not yet noticed, the walls are beginning to crack. And in some places, they're not just cracking, they're outright spitting rocks at this point. In case you're not exactly familiar with what I'm talking about the recent MAGA uproar over the 1HB visa for skilled labor. You see, there's somewhat of a divide in the MAGA world over whether or not skilled labor should ever be imported into the country. So let's go back to where this started. So Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy said that they wanted 1HB visas to still be available for the tech sector. So the tech sector still wanted to be able to bring in skilled labor to work at a cheaper rate than domestic skilled labor, which is the point of all of that. That's why you do it and why you don't hire domestically, because you want to buy cheap. Well, the MAGA community at large didn't really like this. This was something that they found completely unacceptable and started attacking Musk and Ramaswamy, calling them unpatriotic. And some people were saying that they didn't understand MAGA immigration position, or what the MAGA immigration policy is. That policy is apparently to kick all brown people out and to make sure no brown people ever come into the country. They rather made that very clear. No one's coming in at all, especially not the brown. So, both Musk and Ramaswamy said that these high-tech visas are still necessary and important for sectors in which they claim that there's a shortage of people available for those jobs, particularly engineers for the tech sector. Now, is that true? Well, I don't have any evidence there is or any evidence that there isn't. So I'm going to say there probably isn't any. And this is all about just getting cheap labor. And many pointed out that these 1HB contracts are basically indentured servitude. Your employer basically owns you at that point and can do anything with your life that they feel like they have the right, or just for their own entertainment, want to do. They don't want the domestic, which would have much more rights and much more ability to fight for those rights. So, some even denounce this as indentured servitude. For example, Ann Coulter took to Twitter calling it indentured servitude and said that we should have an investing in the domestic labor supply, and investing in American workers and their education, which is weird because it sounds an awful lot like communism. So, with all that said, it turns out that Musk is not quite the free speech advocate that he claimed. Many conservative Twitter individuals or organizations lost their verification status when they disagreed with him and decided, no, 1HB visas are not cool. They're not okay. So there's been a delegitimization of a great number of right-wing accounts across Twitter simply for committing the crime of not agreeing with Elon Musk. And that shows that despite all the bluster that he gave out about how free speech was now back at Twitter and you could now talk again, and that it was a censored hellhole before, he's not exactly living up to it, and he's being incredibly childish in the process. But this is where it's interesting. Isn't this exactly what a friend told me would happen? And I agreed, because it would happen the last time Trump was elected. See, that's the problem with being a populist. Not everything people want is actually feasible, or even sane for that matter. So as much as they would like to have their pure ethno-state, a white nationalist, American Christian nationalist state, that's a bit harder to do than realizes. So that's leading to all kinds of fractures and divisions among the MAGA crowd as exactly how to go about building that best world possible. See, here's the problem. Trump can say he'll do anything he wants. Whether or not he can actually do it is another question. So when it comes time to be real and to put forward actual policy and actually carry out a policy, we find that it's much, much more complex than it is in the stand up, say something dumb, and then have MAGA people applaud it kind of situations. So, what we have is a failure to realize the difference between what you can say on the campaign trail and what is actually feasible in real life. Because the halls of power don't actually work the way Trump thinks it does, or at least, in the very least, wants it to. Look at his recent attempt to order the Republican Party not to agree to a debt ceiling, a new debt ceiling, and allow the government to continue funding. And basically the entire Republican Party told him to go to hell and voted to extend it anyway. I mean, we all knew it was going to get voted to extend anyway. It was. I mean, literally, it's not going to happen. No one is going to actually shut down the entire American government and then, or shut down portions of it, and then simply default on the loan. I mean, it's not going to happen. It's regardless of what party is in power, they're not going to let it happen. So for Trump to try to get them to do this was really actually quite foolish. So you have two forces in power. Trump, who thinks he's God and can do whatever he wants, can put forward any policy he wants without question. And then what you then also have is the Republicans who live in real life and know what's actually feasible and what's not feasible. And when the MAGA crowd finally shows up to reality and starts to see what is actually possible to do, what's not possible to do, they're going to be terribly disappointed. Because there's a pragmatism that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party do have. There is a way things run. There's a way things run that are in favor of the U.S. empire, in favor of keeping the empire together and not letting it fracture into an entire mess or having it devolve into a civil war, which would give all the opportunity necessary for China to take the number one spot away from the U.S. And that's where we are right now. This fracturing that we're seeing, this discontent among the MAGA crowd between two very, very, well, Elon Musk is a very, very high person in the MAGA community, given that he has bought and paid for Donald Trump, and Ramaswamy is sort of on the periphery. Notable names, nonetheless. And they're putting out something that contradicts what it is that the mainstream MAGA want. And basically, that's the conflict. Reality versus desire. Even the idea that Trump is simply going to deport tens of millions of people as his first day in office is simply laughable. The amount of manpower necessary to do that would be absolutely astronomical. The cost would be more than the border wall. It would be insanely high. They're not going to get what they want. There's not going to be mass deportations. There might be mass refusals of caravans to enter the country, but there's not going to be any mass evacuations, mass deportations. It's just not going to happen because realistically, it's just not viable. And that's going to be the one thing that's going to mark Trump's presidency more than anything else. The divide between what he promised and what is actually possible that he can do.